Hi, I think we're live. Are we live? I think we're live. Hi, everyone. I am Angie Cruz, and I am the author of Dominicana. Here is my book in paperback. I'm really excited. And I am helping to facilitate this conversation with Carolina de Robertis and Jaquira Díaz. Do you want to quickly introduce yourselves?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you.
Hi, I think we're live. Are we live? I think we're live.
Thank you so much for coming. And I am so delighted to be here with you at the Brooklyn Book Festival. Thank you, Center for Fiction, and Angie and Jaquira. It's a delight to be here with you all. This is my book, Cantoras, my fourth novel, and I'm so happy to be here with you today celebrating the paperback.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jaquira Díaz. I'm the author of Ordinary Girls, and I'm so happy to be here talking with my homegirls, Carolina and Angie, about love and resistance. Thank you all for coming, and thank you to the Brooklyn Book Fest and Center for Fiction for facilitating this conversation.
So each of us are going to do a short reading, and then we're going to break out into conversations. We hope that you ask us questions. We're going to try to answer as many as possible. I think that we should start the reading with Carolina, and then Jaquira, and then I'll read last.
Okay, fantastic. So I'm going to read a little bit from Cantoras. This is a novel that opens in 1970s Uruguay and follows 5 queer women as they find each other in a time of deep repression in the era of the dictatorship, and then follows them across 3 decades as they turn to each other's friendships as a source of love and survival. Indeed, love and resistance, which makes me so excited to be discussing this topic with these 2 incredibly brilliant women and authors today. So I'm going to read from early in the book. This is a little bit of backstory from 2 of the characters, how they became friends when they were teenagers, before the coup, before the dictatorship began. Romina had been Flaca's best friend since they first met at a Communist Party meeting in early 1973. When Flaca was 17 years old and the whole world still felt like a long story waiting to unfurl before her, largely because she didn't read the newspaper or follow politics, so that even with the occasional evening curfews and the sudden presence of soldiers on the streets, she'd been able to see the world as more or less normal, the country's problems as possible to fix in the long run. These had been the benefits of not paying attention. In those days, she didn't see politics as having anything to do with her or with her hopes for the future, which, at that point, involved finding a way to stay alive while also being herself. She'd only gone to the Communist Party meeting out of boredom and because the flyer had been handed to her by a pretty university student with glossy, intoxicating hair, and Flaca had wanted to see her again. The pretty university student was not at the meeting, which was interminable and chaotic, full of passionate monologues from young and old men who took pastries from trays without saying thank you to the women and girls who brought them. Communism, Flaca thought, must not be for me. The best part of the meeting was Romina, one of the enthused purveyors of pastries, 18 years old. Romina's hair was not glossy. It was, in fact, just the opposite, a dark riot of curls, also good to drown in. There was something about her, a kind of billowing intensity to her gaze that made Flaca want to stare at her all night and then some. Toward the end of the meeting, Romina finally had a chance to speak, and she did so with such a passion that Flaca became officially obsessed. She buried that obsession under a mantle of friendship, best friendship, fast friendship, tell each other all friendship, for a month, until finally one night, they kissed in the bathroom of a nightclub in Ciudad Vieja after dancing with a string of hapless young men. She was stupefied to discover that this could happen, that a girl could kiss her back. It was as good as in her dreaming, better. The world turned inside out to fit her dreams. Between the world of boy and the world of girl, they had found a chasm no one spoke of. They fell into it together. They met in their homes when their fathers were at work and their mothers out at a card game or the hair salon, the sex furtive, sharp with the danger of being discovered. On 3 glorious occasions, They saved up pesos for a cheap motel room where the bored clerks assumed them to be sisters when they checked in, and where they never wasted a single hour on sleep. I will stop there. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. I'm going to read two very short excerpts, one from the very opening of Ordinary Girls and one that's somewhere in the middle. The first one is Girlhood. We were the girls who strolled onto the blacktop on long summer days, dribbling past the boys on the court. We were the girls on the merry-go-round, laughing and letting the world spin while holding on for our lives. The girls on the swings, throwing our heads back, the wind in our hair. We were the loudmouths, the troublemakers, the practical jokers. We were the party girls, hitting the clubs in booty shorts and high-top Jordans, smoking blunts on the beach. We were the wild girls who loved music and dancing, girls who were Black and brown and poor and queer, girls who loved each other. I have been those girls, on a Greyhound bus, homeless and on the run, a girl sleeping on lifeguard stands, behind a stilt house restaurant, on a bus stop bench, a hoodlum girl, throwing down with boys and girls and their older sisters and even the cops, suspended every year for fighting on the first day of school, kicked out of music class for throwing a chair at the math teacher's son, kicked off 2 different school buses, kicked out of pre-algebra for stealing the teacher's grade book, a girl who got slammed onto a police car by 2 cops in front of the whole school after a brawl with 6 other girls. And I have been other girls, girl standing before a judge, girl on a dock the morning after a hurricane, looking out at the bay like it's the end of the world, girl on a rooftop, girl on a ledge, girl plummeting through the air, and years later, a woman writing letters to a prisoner on death row. And the girls I ran with, half of them I was secretly in love with, street girls who were escaping their own lives, trading the chaos of home for the chaos on the streets. One of them had left home after being molested by a family member, lived with her brother most of the time. Another had 2 babies before she was a junior in high school and decided they were better off with the father, a man in his 30s. Only one had what I thought was a perfectly good set of parents at home, a dad who owned a restaurant and paid for summer vacations abroad, a mom who planned birthday parties and cooked dinner. They were girls who fought with me, smoked out with me, got arrested with me, girls who snuck into clubs with me, terrorized the neighborhood with me, got jailhouse tattoos with me. Girls who picked me up when I was stranded and brought me food when I was starving, who sat with me outside the emergency room after my boy was stabbed in a street fight, who held me and cried with me at my abuela's funeral. Hood girls who were strong and vulnerable, who taught me about love and friendship and hope. Sometimes in dreams, I return to those girls, those places, and we are still there, all of us, roller skating on the boardwalk, laying out our beach towels on the sand, dancing to Missy Elliott's Work It under the full moon. We are women now, those of us who are alive, the ones who made it. For a while there, we didn't know if any of us would. That's how it was with us, how it was supposed to be. We kept each other's secrets, wiped each other's tears, protected each other. We passed notes during class. We told each other everything, our fantasies and our crushes, the latest argument with our parents, the TLC concert we've been saving up for, the guy who confessed his love while we rode the bus together on a Friday after school. We sat together in the cafeteria, found each other in the hallways. We harmonized to Shy's If I Ever Fall in Love or En Vogue's Hold On while we waited for the bell to ring. We went on missions together, cutting class and catching the bus to the mall or the flea market or the beach, singing Whitney in the back of the bus. We snuck out to salsa music festivals at Bayfront Park on the weekends, turning each other to Andy Montañez's Casi Te Envidio and Frankie Ruiz's Mi Libertad until the park closed. We went to birthday parties at Hot Wheels, where we strapped on rented roller skates and cruised around La Pista with the disco lights, shaking it to Two Live Crew. We wore short shorts and crop tops, baggy jeans and basketball jerseys, big hoop earrings, and no matter what, everybody had opinions about how we dressed, called us tomboys or hood rats or fast girls. Our shorts were too short, our jeans too tight, too baggy, our voices too loud. Everybody wanted to control what we wore, what we did, who we did it with. We were not the girls they wanted us to be. We were not allowed to talk like this, to want like this. We're not supposed to feel the kind of desire you feel at 13, at 14. What kind of girl, they loved to say. What kind of girl? Even as they took what we gave, took what we tried to hold on to, our voices, our bodies. We were trying to live, but the world was doing its best to kill us. And I'll stop there.
Wow. It's so funny because I've read your books and I love your books. And when I hear them read again, I just fall in love again with these women. I have decided not to read from Dominicana. And instead, I wanted to read something by Chiara Alegria Hughes. She was on the poster, but she's not with us because there was a mix-up. And I just wanted to honor her voice in this conversation. One of the reasons that Carolina and Jaquira and I started to had decided that we were going to book tour together and take this on the road was because we wanted to amplify each other's voices, but also like build and read toward our community. And that included inviting other writers that we were passionate about. And Chiara Alegria Hughes is coming out with a book very soon next year. And she wrote this essay for a theater magazine, and it's called High Tide of Heartbreak. And I think it's tied really well with the themes of love and resistance. So I thought that I would read a little bit of it and then we would jump into conversation. Okay, it's called High Tide of Heartbreak. Has theater wounded me as much as or more than it healed me? She says, I want to start with love. I suspect there is at least one love story in your life that blazed the trail to this very magazine page. Maybe you loved the way lights fell on your face, the blindness as you looked out at the invisible audience bank. Maybe you loved backstage anonymity, the chaotic machinery and runaround that keeps a performance seamless. Maybe you were 7 and loved the first play you saw. Back then, you probably loved it more than you understood it. Remember how glorious that was? Immersion in an experience you didn't necessarily understand. Why do grown-ups cling to getting it? What a small, unadventurous parameter for experiencing art. Tomasito, what do you want to be when you grow up? A firefighter? Lucecita, what about you? When I grow up, I want to go to the theater and get it. Maybe, like me, you loved a cousin and wanted to tell this story. Maybe, like me, you had a mentor, in my case, Paula Vogel, and her warm, ebullient energy. One time, in our 16-year friendship, I saw her lash out with anger and self-defense at a bunch of whiny MFA students. Hint, myself and my cohort. And the way she showed that hurt made me love her more than ever, because it is hard for a woman to stand up for herself. I always wished my abuela had stood up for herself just one time in life, spent in service of others. So when Paula did just that, I loved her doubly for it. Tending our wounds is central to loving. Love is richer when it comes with an understanding of pain endured, of mortality faced, of chasms crossed. To love is to face the wound honestly and let the wound be less than one's entire truth. To love despite the wound. That is the kind of love, I think, that calls me to express these thoughts today. I suppose I need your help. I am writing this not to share wisdom, juicy gossip, or war stories, but to articulate a question and reach out a hand for guidance. For I fear that at 40, having produced 3 musicals and 4 plays I am proud of, 2 early plays I am fond of, and a handful of work I'd rather forget about, at 40 years old, having worked on Broadway and off, regionally and internationally, having gone into debt and then paid off those debts, all thanks to my theater habit, having some paperback books that sit in library shelves with my name on the cover that maybe a kid like me will discover for free and feel less lonely as she cracks open the pages. I fear that today, after all that, the wound feels bigger than I can handle. I fear that the ways theater has harmed me are winning out over the ways theater has nourished me. Since my first musical in 1998, opening night has always entailed stress. There is much to do and few hours to do it. An entire team looks to me, the playwright, for ballast and strength, for confidence and support, for vision, clarity, and therapy, should everyone topple. And yet, reviews loom and the set isn't working, and neither is scene 7. And what if I rewrite it and the actors memorize it only to discover that the new scene 7 sucks? How will the audience view my Latinx stories? And if they are mostly white, does that mean my cast is performing race? And doesn't that injure our pride, our self-determination? How will it feel to go out on stage and once again not be afforded the luxury of neutrality? Will all the community outreach I've done in the Latinx community saying, hey, you know that huge theater downtown? I'm here to say you are welcome there. I invite you inside. Will all that community outreach lead to 2% Latinx in an audience? Or hopefully, dear God, 15%? Will the audience be mostly wealthy? And so will my character's poverty look monstrous? Is my play cultural trend tourism? Will the critics be mostly male and white? Will my little sister come and see how she has inspired me and feel outed and humiliated and angry at what I've turned her life, our life, into? Will I lose my family due to the mockery I've made of our stories? What right have I to joke about or fictionalize our pain? Is honesty, which I strive for, also a form of violence? And I'll end there. I think she gives us a lot to think about. So I wanted to just start with that, right? Like the love we have for books and writing, and the ways that as writers, sometimes the things we love are also slowly destroying us. So I'm curious, like, if you wanted to start talking about any aspects of being a writer or even the process of writing that you feel some kind of solidarity with some of the things Chiara was saying in her essay.
Yeah, I can start. So that quote really spoke to me, to love despite the wound. Because one of the things that I kept thinking about as I was writing Ordinary Girls was, how do I get that across to people, that even though this was a very a life filled with abuse and chaos, that these are still people that I fiercely love. And I'm talking about my family, right? And I felt at times while I was writing, like I was outing them, like I was outing my family, like I was outing myself, like I was in some ways recreating some of this pain. And I always wondered who would be reading this and what would they be thinking. It felt like I was telling on us, like I was telling on my family, on our community, like I was telling dirty secrets. And for gain, right? And so when I think about to love despite the wound, it's something that I wanted to get across, that we fiercely loved each other, not just because we were related, but because or not just because we were, blood, but because we were family, but because we were in so many ways brought up in a culture that celebrates everything related to family and community, that family and community was always there, even while, you know, things were ugly and fucked up. In terms of, you know, loving the thing that is also destroying you, like writing, it still today feels like this has been a fight, like to get a book out, to get the book in bookstores, to get people to read it, to get people to pay attention, to take me seriously as a writer who is writing work that's literary. It still feels like a fight. Like I spend more time fighting than writing.
Yeah. Thank you so much for all those brilliant thoughts, Jaquira, and for bringing Kiara's luminous voice to us, Angie, and reading it to us so elegantly, and bringing those thoughts for us, because I think that is one of the dynamics at the heart of that intersection of love and resistance for the content of our books, but also for our work as writers. I mean, I came to my passion for writing and my passion for books and reading out of the urge to be free, the urge for liberation. I mean, from a very early age, I fell into books as an immigrant kid. I came to this country at the age of 10, and I had been an immigrant kid in 2 other countries before that. And as I just had this real feeling of being an outsider and navigating a culture that wasn't familiar, or where I didn't feel a full sense of belonging, and books gave me an escape. And they gave me different kinds of mirrors. And I sort of entered my passion for writing with a kind of, in a way, sort of an idea that this was a place where we could be free on the page. You know, I was really fortunate that I read Toni Morrison for the first time at the age of 16, The Bluest Eye, you know, and little did I know at 16 years old what Toni Morrison had gone through and what she had fought, and how she had fought for her fellow Black and Black women writers, you know, against the dynamics of a publishing industry not designed for her. None of that was visible to me, you know, at that time. Now the dynamics in publishing are much more visible to me. And I published my first book in 2009. And I do feel like in the last 11 years, I have seen so much change in publishing. Even the fact that there are 3 of us and we are all Latinas on this panel, and our work is so richly and beautifully different from each other, which is of course true because we Latinx folks are immensely and beautifully, you know, wide-ranging in our experiences, in our lenses, in our aesthetics, in our cultures, in our, you know, root stories and the things we have to say, and yet we've often been sort of reduced to like sort of the one, you know, the one on the panel or the one at the festival. So this feels like a really explosive and powerful realm of possibility to be able to have conversations also within Latinidad, you know, that show the range of things that are available. And in terms of the wounding, I mean, I think it's always a risk. It's a risk putting things on the page and not knowing how they're going to be seen and how they're going to be interpreted. And I've definitely had my share of experiences of reading reviews of my books. I mean, people have a right to write reviews that are, you know, negative or mixed, but reviews that were white-splaining or hetero-splaining or mansplaining, sometimes some sort of concoction, you know, between those, like a cocktail of 2 or 3 of those elements at the same time. And that's very real. Being able to have our work sort of arrive into the world on the terms in which it was created is not always possible, and in some ways less possible when we write from cultural margins. But I think it's important to keep rooting in what it means for us to love books, to be readers, and what it means to us to write. For me, you know, writing the stories of these women, a generation older than me, who were queer in a time of deep repression in my root country, Uruguay, was so important because I had researched the Uruguayan dictatorship for 15 years for other novels, and books in English or Spanish published anywhere in the world, that there were none of all the books I looked at. I mean, shelves and shelves of books. There were none that really looked at what it was like to be LGBTQ plus in that time. And here I was gathering, you know, in-person experiences and oral histories from women I had met who had never recorded them anywhere. They just lived their lives. They just wanted to breathe and live and be free. And they found ways to do that under the radar. And I was just blown away. So it was an act of love, right? To gather those stories and to put them on the page. And I think about I think about Audre Lorde, of course, all the time. And I'm rereading her biomythography, Zami, right now, just for solace in these times.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things she said, and I need to paraphrase it, is basically when we speak, we have the fear of being misunderstood. But if we do not speak, we may still be misunderstood. So
Mm-hmm.
it is better to speak.
You know,
and I come back to that as a writer, and I'd love to hear, Angie, what your thoughts are.
Well, you know, I was thinking about both of what you were saying about this fight, right? There's the fight on the thing that we're trying to put on the page, or to fill the dearth of like the stories that we know need to be told and we want to tell. And I was thinking about something this past week. I spent this week, as both of you know, doing a Black Study intensive with the Center of African American Poetry and Poetics at Pitt. And Sadiya Hartman was one of the speakers. She's the author of Wayward Lives, for anyone who's here and is interested in reading another nonfiction, beautiful book. And she said something, she said, do we want to be inheritors of the big house, right? And when she said this, it was in the context of, what are we fighting toward, right? Like, one of the issues, and I think this is also tying back to Chiara's book, essay, is that, you know, like the dream is, let me be in theater, right? Let me publish a book. Let me be part of this world. And the betrayal in some ways for me has always been like, oh, wait, this system was never made to include me and my story, or even the way that I work, right? Like, you know, it took me a long time to say, what's wrong with being a collectivist? What's wrong with being, you know, a community-driven person? Why is activism seen as anti-intellectual? Why is joy seen as anti-intellectual? Why is responding with your emotions seen as anti-intellectual? When really, like, that value system of being in community, working in community, thinking in collective should be something that is valued and high in the hierarchy of things that we should be doing, right? So I think the betrayal for me always is that I go into a system that is highly capitalistic, patriarchal, heterosexual, individualistic, right? Which is about the one chosen, the best, this false meritocracy that has nothing to do with quality most of the time. And then it's like, wait a minute, is this what I would inherit? Is this the thing that I've been working so hard for to be here on this side, which feels really unfulfilling, you know? So when I think about the fight or the wounds, for me, the biggest betrayal is to realize that I'm basically, the thing that we're fighting for unknowingly sometimes is the thing that is so invested in our erasure. So what do we do? Like, I'm interested now in what the hell are we going to do? You know what I mean? Like, so hearing this, I'm like, yeah. And I do, like, I'm going to Audre Lorde all the time. I actually pulled out a quote by this writer, Adrienne Marie Brown. She wrote this book called Pleasure Activism. I haven't read the book, but I read an essay with the book. And she quoted, Audre Lorde taught us that caring for ourselves is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation. And that is an act of political warfare, right? And then she goes to say, we don't learn to love at a linear path from self to family to friends to spouse as we might have been taught. We learn to love by loving. We practice with each other, on ourselves, in all kinds of relationships, right? So I was thinking about how together we're practicing. I feel like even now, like in this space, you know, like every time we come together, we're practicing a new way of how to be a literary, intellectual, creative being in a system that somehow felt fixed, but it isn't. It's not fixed. So, you know, that's my response to what you all said. I don't know if you have a response. There's no question.
I do. So when you ask what do we do now from here, it's felt to me like what I've been fighting for has always been a seat at the table, right? To be included. But I think you're right. You're absolutely right. It's not just a seat at the table. It's once I'm sitting at that table, to be allowed to speak the way I want to speak, and to be allowed to address the community I want to address, to be allowed to center my community and think of my community as the center of the universe, as the people that I want to have a conversation with. And for everyone else to accept that this is valid, right? In some ways, I think what we do now is not just fight for that seat at the table, but once we're there, like bring other people in, and lifting others as we climb, and open doors for others as we're opening them, and as we're being let in. But I think most importantly, for me, keeping my eye on that vision, which is to center my community and to write about my communities, and thinking of them as us, as the center of the universe, the center of my universe, and for that to be as valid as what is considered mainstream literary, whatever. I think keeping my eye on the ball, like that for me, I don't think this would have been possible even 2 years ago, right? To have 3 queer Latinas talking about our work on one panel, and just, so that we get to talk about love and resistance and not representation.
Mm-hmm. 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 It's true. One of the things I was thinking about, our work and transformation, right? So like, I'm curious, we're all past our first, second, some of us third, fourth books and into different projects. What have you learned through writing? Like, how has it changed you, or how has the work changed as you've developed your work? Is that a crazy question? Carolina, do you want to try?
That's an interesting question. I mean, in so many ways, I do feel like I follow the work and I try to listen to what the urgency is of the work. And it's a balance, right? Because of course I want my work to go into the world and be meaningful to others. But I think that as a writer, if we make an assumption of this is what I'm going to write because I feel like I should, because it's what the world seems to want or need, that may or may not be the book that I am best positioned to create. So as an example with Cantoras, I could easily say, well, this is the periphery of the periphery. Especially when I started to get serious about putting the book down in 2016, 2017, I started to really turn towards starting to draft it, even though it had been swimming in my mind as an idea and as a kind of gathering of research place for 14 years. I thought, well, I don't even know if anyone will want to read this, because it's like peripheral women by being gay and in a peripheral country, this tiny little country, far-flung Uruguay. And so I could feel the urgency on my end, but I didn't necessarily know how it would end up speaking to. I've been very moved to hear how it speaks to people, for example, like, dykes in the US, lesbians in the US, and not just lesbians, but just people who are thinking about like what it means to be human and othered in your own society. And these kinds of questions that are under the surface of things that like Jaquira so eloquently, beautifully stakes out as a terrain. And even in the passage that you read, Jaquira, about, the world was trying to kill us, and not everybody made it. And it does feel like these are like women who are trying to just live authentically and radiantly when the world feels bent on their erasure. And so thematically, it's connected to something that so many of us are living through, particularly in these times. But at the time of kind of committing to the work, there's a way in which, at least for me, it is about listening inward into what feels urgent, the book that urgently feels like it needs to come through me. And that the way in which that urgency translates into a urgency for the world may or may not always be immediately obvious to me as a writer. But I think one of the things I've learned is to just kind of root back into trusting that there's a reason that this work wants to come through me right now, even if I may not entirely see what the connection is out into the world. how
So
it's
do
going
you feel now like freer as a writer to write both?
yeah,
Has
like
this given you a kind of like liberated you in a way?
yeah, it's like I trust my relationship with my muses in a way. I mean, I think it's a very natural thing to have muses, to have a sense of, we don't talk about it this way anymore, like the ancient Greeks did, but this idea of like opening to the muses, what wants to be told through me and what's pulling me. And really, it's a way of engaging our intuition. And sometimes engaging the full intelligence of our subconscious, along with everything else inside of our intellects. Because our subconscious sometimes knows more than we yet fully know on the surface about what needs to be written, about what's wanting to be said through us. And so trusting that channel instead of kind of falling into self-doubt. Will this matter to anyone? What will people think? Which I think I was really crippled by self-doubt early on. For a lot of different reasons. And I think a lot of women are, I think a lot of immigrant writers, women of color, like, we just often have these narratives that we've absorbed just by being in the world, that maybe our voices don't matter, or the thing that we want to say doesn't matter. So clarifying my way through that, it's like I have like a blade that can cut through that. It doesn't mean that it's not there. Yeah, that's something that's changed for me over time as a writer. And that helps me just like focus on the love and the resistance.
Right.
So, what about
Jaquira, what changes have you discovered either in your work or how your work has taught you something? And I say this because I just did a thing with Aracelis Gourmet, another wonderful, amazing poet. And she was saying, I learned by my poems. And I love that idea of walking with your work, like where the work is your teacher, So, do you have anything?
I feel like the work, Ordinary Girls is my first book, but I feel like the work has humbled me. I was very certain when I was writing Ordinary Girls that I knew exactly what I was doing. I had a vision and I was sure of it. I was like, I'm very confident. I know exactly what comes now, and I know exactly what comes next. I know what the second book will be, what the third book will be, and I have a plan. And I feel like the work humbled me and has allowed me to be more open to ideas. Kind of like what Carolina was saying, letting the work kind of guide you. And I'm much better now at working on several things at once and pausing and taking a break for my mental health, but also because I'm going where the enthusiasm is for the writing. So I'm working on a novel for a couple months, and then stepping away from the novel and then writing some essays. And I'm letting that feel okay. I'm letting that be fulfilling and not thinking about deadlines or timelines or, what my plans were, because everything is so uncertain. So I'm letting the work kind of fulfill me in ways that the writing of Ordinary Girls never did, because that felt so heavy, and it felt like it was taking a toll on my mental health, my physical and emotional health. And now the writing feels nourishing. The writing feels very, very different. And I'm like, it's okay if I don't finish this novel in the next 3 months. I'm gonna be fine. I'll write some essays, I'll get back to the work, and I'll be okay. And so I feel like the writing is much stronger because I'm not pressuring myself to follow through on this, vision I had for the work. I'm just like, I will let, like Carolina said, the muses kind of guide me a little bit. I don't know that the writing itself has necessarily changed. The process certainly has. I know that I'm reading a lot more, and that feels wonderful. I couldn't read in the same way while I was writing Ordinary Girls. I read, but it didn't feel pleasurable. It felt like, this is research. I'm going to read these 30-something books over the course of the next 2 years. So because I guess that pressure is off, doing everything else that's related to books and the literary world feels okay.
There's a question, and we don't have a lot of time, so I want to answer that question. But what I do want to say is that when you say about like, I feel like for me, the big thing that has changed is time, right? So first of all, I can't even believe that I've been sheltering in place for 7 months. I'm like, where did the time go? Right? Like first it felt eternal and then it moves really fast and we don't even know how long this moment is going to last. Right. But I do think that when I was a younger writer, I felt this like, oh my God, the story has to be out in the world now or else it won't make sense, because we live in a world that feels so trend oriented or like things have to matter at the moment, when books are actually a really slow process. You write a book, it takes 2 years to see it in print. So it makes no sense to even think that way. And I feel like with Dominicana, you know, I started that book in 2005 and I wrote that story and I thought, oh, if it doesn't sell now, it's not going to make sense, or it's important now, or it's important now. And actually when it came out, it was exactly the right time for that book, right? Like I think the book, I think one of the things that Trump did is accelerate some issues that are really important in our communities, right? So there was suddenly hyper visibility of the immigration issue, which we've always known about, and it's always existed. Domestic violence, you know, the disenfranchisement of women. Me Too sort of raised the visibility of you know, consent and all these things that really came to the like this, you know, the media in a way that made the book a lot more legible for a wider audience. So I think that in that way, like I learned a lot about writing. It's like, oh wait, whatever I want to write now, like you said, the urgency that I have now actually will be always, when the book comes out, it'll be the right moment. So the question, and we don't have a lot of time, so I want you guys to answer it, is the question is, I'm going to try to put them together and you answer whatever part you want, is what advice would you give a Latinx writer who wants to become a Latinx person who wants to become a writer, how to start writing when you never felt you were entitled to write? So I guess, you know, and then how would you all say your cultural backgrounds have impacted your writing? So I guess we could collapse that, right? So what advice would we give to writers and how does our cultural background impact writing? Carolina, do you want to say something quick before we close?
I'll put out there, it's so exciting to hear that there are people who are aspiring writers out there, and just, you know, keep writing, root into your passion and the stories that are calling you, and trust that they want to be told through you for a reason. And in terms of our identities, I mean, there's an old narrative that implies that if our identities are marginalized, they're an impediment. But here's, circling back to Toni Morrison, something she said when asked about whether she was troubled by or bothered by being called a Black woman writer. She said, I can accept the labels because being a Black woman writer is not a shallow place, but a rich place to write from. It doesn't limit my imagination, it expands it. It's richer than being a white male writer because I know more and I've experienced more. So hold who and where you are and place that at the beautiful center.
Thank you for that. That was beautiful. And so I want to address the second part, how cultural background impacts writing. For me, it's very easy because I live and breathe and wake up Puerto Rican every single day, and I can't like divorce that from who I am. And it's, for me, it's been, my culture is, I come from a culture that is very deeply rooted in storytelling and oral storytelling. And so for me, that actually, in a lot of ways, made me a writer. I come from a family of people who love telling stories. And so we were always, it's kind of the way that we talk to each other, we tell stories. So that, in a way, even impacted and continues to my aesthetic, like the way that I write even essays and memoir. It's like the thing that drives me is telling stories. So I feel like that kind of shapes my life every day. Advice for Latinx writers or for people who want to be writers is, you are a writer, right? Do it. I give you permission.
I want to say that too. I think that, you know, one of the things that the media and all these machines, and I'm going to invoke Toni Morrison, who said in 1975, when she did that amazing talk in Portland, she said something like, you know, the media, all it does is imitate. Writers create. Don't look at the media to tell you what stories you should tell. We need your stories. write for us. You know, our communities need stories that are written for us. She, as an editor, dedicated her life in talking about, I want stories where people are talking to me, not to the white gaze. That is your entitlement. You know what I mean? Like that you have something to say and we need to hear it. Thank you so much. I think we have to end because we're past our time. Thank you, Carolina and Jaquira. I love seeing you all. I can't wait to do it again.
Thank you both. Thank you,
you.
Jaquira.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. We love
Bye.
you.
Thank you all for coming.